Coming up on Network Africa. Mali's army repels terror attack as main military base came under heavy gunfire. Côte d'Ivoire's President Alassane Ouattara visits South Africa. He signed 6 new agreements between both countries. Plus, the World Health Organization says Africa to launch large-scale malaria vaccination. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Tenyo Lashiboale. We begin here in West Africa, where the Malian army says it has repelled a terror attack on its main military base just outside the capital, Bamako. 2 cars parked with explosives were detonated at the Kati military base, with people living near the camp reporting hearing heavy gunfire for around an hour, and helicopters circling above the base, which is just 15 kilometers from Bamako. A brief military statement says 7 of the assailants and 1 soldier were killed and that the situation is now under control. The army describes it as a terrorist attack, language the military uses to refer to Islamist militants. Jihadists have been carrying out frequent attacks in Mali, most in the central and north of the country. Last week, they targeted a checkpoint just 70 kilometers from Bamako, killing 6 people. 2 soldiers were killed in another raid on Thursday. The military leaders who seized power in August 2020 have said securing the country from insurgent attacks is their main priority. Now let's speak to security analyst David Otto for more on this. Hello, David. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. In recent weeks, Mali has been headlines with the country in a rather precarious situation, politically and security-wise. What are your thoughts on this latest attack on the major military base near the capital, Bamako?
I think this is very concerning, as you saw in the the letter that was written by the general to talk about the situation with the attacks. More concerning that this attack occurred on the military base, which is the Kati military base. This has been the site of the 2 previous military coups, but also the 2012 coup d'etat. So it's a very significant attack on a very strategic location. But of course, as you rightly said, the Malian government has been facing some serious political and security crises. Recently, as you know, there has been also calls for some countries to withdraw their forces, from Mali, including Egypt. So it's quite a big attack, even though it was repelled. This will be seen by the jihadist group that is affiliated to Al-Qaeda, Katiba Masina, as a successful attack. Because of course one of the Malian soldiers, was killed and others were injured. But we're thankful that, the attack was repelled. But again, it signifies a major crisis, within Mali.
And let's talk about the deteriorating relations with the international community. Last week, Mali suspended all new rotations of UN peacekeeping forces. After this, Egypt announced its troops withdrawal from the peacekeeping mission. And currently, there's a dispute with Côte d'Ivoire on its soldiers in detention. I mean, the military leaders have said that they want to secure the country from insurgent attacks, which is their main priority. But can they achieve this without the support of the international community?
I think what the military junta has been doing recently or in the past, since it took over power, has been to consolidate itself, internally and to kind of, brush off, as I may say, some of the international contacts that they had. Mind you, the Malian government has accused the French government, for example, for supporting rebels and terrorist organizations within the country. And as you rightly said, they've expelled, some of the foreign missions. So I think it's quite a situation where the Malian government is much more focusing on winning the hearts and minds of Malians, focusing on the internal strategies rather than pleasing the international community. But so far, I think they are winning because, of course, as you rightly know, ECOWAS has now suspended the sanctions that were given against the military junta, and they've accepted them to be in power until 2024.
Yeah, and how likely do you think that is for the 24-month transition to democracy?
Of course, one has to wait and see. But I believe that at some point, the military would have to concede to giving back power to the civilian population or the civilian, government. But again, you may likely see a situation where the military will then, change its attire and then become part of that civilian or democratic system of governance. But I think the most important thing is for the government to stabilize the country and to ensure that the security and political situation in the country is, is brought back to some level of normality. Right now, the presence of terrorist groups, coming as close, as you said, 15 miles away from the capital, Bamako, it's an indication that, the military junta has a lot to do, not just handing over power, which, of course, is what, has been sounded by the international community. One thing which has made the Malian government very aggressive towards them. But the focus now is on Malians, I say.
All right, then, security analyst David Otto, thank you so much for your thoughts on the program.
Thank you.
Moving on, intense clashes have erupted between rival factions in Libya early today, with reports of several people killed amid growing concern that a political standoff could prompt renewed conflict. The clashes were reported in the central district near the Radisson Blu Hotel, an area where several government and international agencies and diplomatic missions are based, as well as military vehicles mobilized around Zawayed Damani. Witnesses also said there was fighting in the Asba area, and the Ain Zara Tripoli residents said a man and a child had been killed. Local news reports citing medical sources later said that 5 people had been killed. Libya has been teetering on the edge of chaos for months after the eastern-based parliament rejected the unity government in Tripoli, which was installed through a UN-backed process last year, and appointed a rival administration. And gunmen have shot dead the mayor of a town in northern South Africa and injured his son during a raid at their home on Thursday night. According to police, the attack was carried out by 3 suspects and have appealed for information from the public. 56-year-old Moses Maluleke was the mayor of the Collins Chabane in Limpopo province. His 18-year-old son was taken to hospital after the attack. Police say father and son refused to comply with the attacker's demand for money. In the meantime, a 72-hour police action plan has been mobilized to arrest the suspects. And South Africa has lifted most COVID-19 restrictions and eased the implementation of health measures. This was attributed to South Africa's accessible, effective treatment approaches and the availability of COVID-19 vaccines. Government agency National Institute for Communicable Diseases believes that easing health measures will not lead to the increase of COVID-19 infections in South Africa, as hospitalizations and reported deaths have declined. According to officials, there is confidence that the relaxation of health measures will not lead to a new COVID variant. And the World Health Organization says the African continent will launch a large-scale malaria vaccination in coming years, with funds worth $160 million from the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization. According to WHO Regional Director for Africa, Mashidiso Rebecca Mowachi, at an online press conference, every year about 25 million newborn are in need of vaccines. The WHO plans to continue working with the Gavi to expand vaccination work on the continent from 2022 to 2025.
One child dies every minute in Africa from malaria. So by the time we finish this one-hour press conference today, 60 more young lives will have been tragically cut short on the continent, with catastrophic consequences, not only for families and communities, but also for national development. Countries in sub-Saharan Africa bear the brunt of the burden of malaria, accounting for more than 9 out of 10 of the over 240 million global cases in 2020, along with most of the more than 600,000.
Now, the president of Côte d'Ivoire, Alassane Ouattara, is on a state visit to South Africa, a reciprocal one made by his host in December 2021. Part of today's event were the grand reception at the Union Buildings in Pretoria, ahead of business meeting of players from both countries. Last year, both countries signed 9 cooperation agreements and hoped to deepen bilateral ties, which were established in May 1992.
We will be signing memoranda of understanding in areas of transport, social development, social inclusion, forestry and wildlife. We will also be signing a memorandum of understanding on cooperation between our 2 respective schools of government. We are encouraged by the fact that despite the challenges that were posed by COVID-19, bilateral trade between South Africa and Côte d'Ivoire has been on the upward trajectory. Over the last 3 years, the value of South African exports to Côte d'Ivoire has increased by almost 25%, which is a truly admirable rise of trade. The value of South African imports from Côte d'Ivoire has increased by more than 200% over the same period. This is definitely progress.
I would like to thank you for the business forum organized during the state visit to encourage business people from our 2 countries to explore investment opportunities. I'm convinced that these meetings will increase not only the volume of trade between our 2 countries, but investments by South Africans in Côte d'Ivoire and by Ivorians in South Africa.
The head of Ukraine's largest steel company has accused Russia of looting more than $600 million worth of the metal from ports and factories. Yuri Shevnikov, the chief executive of Metinvest, said Ukrainian-produced steel was now being sold by Russia to Asia, Africa and other parts of the world, despite having already been ordered by customers in Europe. Russia has not commented on the matter. He said 300 workers had been killed at the Azovstal plant in Mariupol, which was besieged by Russian forces for 3 months. He adds that the site and another nearby facility produced 40% of all Ukrainian steel. Still ahead on the program. And tech companies here in Nigeria use STEM learning to prepare children for future opportunities. More details in a moment. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us on the program. It's a common sight in Addis Ababa these days to see men, women and even children moving around the city with huge bags of plastic waste. Their hauls mostly contain plastic bottles, but any plastic waste they come across will fetch cash according to its weight.
At the Mercato Open Air Market in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, young men gather to sell plastic bottles and other plastic waste collected from the city's streets, restaurants and other likely spots. Some may look down on making money in this way, but 30-year-old Marion Geber is so grateful for the income that he is not concerned. But 30-year-old Marion Geber is so grateful for the income that he is not concerned with any negative perceptions. Gebre buys plastic bottles from scrap collectors, then resells them to recyclers. On a good day, a hefty collection of discarded plastic bottles can earn him between 34 to 38 US cents.
It's been almost 8 years since I started this job. There are 10 of us selling discarded plastic bottles, and we have also created an association. A lot of people come here. More than 500 people come here per day to collect the plastic bottles. On average, we collect more than 200 kilograms of plastic bottles. That is, when it is low, there are days where we collect more than 3,000 kilograms per day.
According to non-profit body Petco Ethiopia, the East African country generates about 250,000 tons of plastic waste per year, but only less than 10% is collected and recycled. But waste can be valuable if recycled. 60-year-old Addis Ababa resident Machiye Bogale says collecting and selling plastic bottles is what helps her survive. But she says increased unemployment has made the business more competitive, with more and more young people getting into the trade.
What I sold today is from 3 days worth of collection. The bag weighed 7 kgs in total. That's $1.50 US cents. I buy tea, coffee and bread with it, since I don't have a house where I can cook.
In Ethiopia, plastic waste is often transformed into PET, which is commonly used by multinationals like Coca-Cola and Unilever for their bottles. But local lawyer and activist Melkamo Ogo warns that these initiatives will cause more harm to the environment due to more plastic waste being generated.
A lot of companies that used to package their products using glass are now switching to plastic packaging. This can cause major damage since they produce in huge quantities. The damage they cause can also be as huge.
According to Ethiopian government figures, EKT Trade and Investment PLC, the country's biggest and oldest plastic recycler, made $1.2 million US from PET exports to Europe, Asia and the Gulf countries in 2021.
French President Emmanuel Macron has met with his Egyptian counterpart Abdel Fattah el-Sisi at the presidential palace in Paris for a working lunch to discuss diplomatic relations between the two countries. Mr. Macron last met Sisi in late 2021 on the sidelines of a conference on the situation in Libya. France and Egypt have cultivated closer economic and military ties during President Sisi's rise to power. Between 2013 to 2017, France was the main weapon supplier to Egypt. A Kenyan court has found 3 policemen and an informant guilty of the murder of human rights lawyer Willie Kimani and 2 other people in June 2016. The bodies of Mr. Kimani, his client Josephat Mwenda, and their driver Joseph Mururi were found in a river on the outskirts of the capital Nairobi, days after the lawyer had filed a case against one of the officers. The killing sparked outrage in Kenya, where cases of forced disappearances and extra extrajudicial killings have been blamed on the police in recent years. Another policeman was acquitted of all 3 murder charges. Justice Jesse Lessett said those found guilty had 14 days to appeal against the verdict. Welcome to our Africa Tech segment. In order to keep track with the ever-changing technological trends, many tech and education experts believe children should be exposed to computational thinking by incorporating STEM learning into their school curriculum. According to Jadesola Adedeji, founder of STEM Maths, equipping young learners with tech-savvy skills early enough will prepare them for jobs of the future.
Countries across the world are adopting a system where young children and teenagers are introduced to science, technology, engineering and mathematics early enough.
As long as you pick on the parts, you can take the properties of the parts. Agree? Now,
Preparing today's children to become the innovators and inventors of tomorrow begins with STEM education programs, which is why for these young minds at STEM Mets, it's all about creative and computational thinking as well as innovation.
now fold your foil paper onto your popsicle stick.
STEM, that is, science, technology, engineering and mathematics, is an acronym that was coined to address the current and future shortage of skilled workers in high-tech fields and the inadequate education of students in these areas. And in order to keep track with the ever-changing technological trends, these children are exposed to the current and future opportunities in STEM. This opens their eyes to the exciting world of science and technology, while also ensuring sustainability and transfer of knowledge.
STEM is hands-on, it's project-based, it's practical application to real life. It's moving away from cramming and regurgitating rote learning to a more creative way of teaching and learning.
Chukwuyalu Udozo is an 8-year-old who aims to become a mechanical engineer. He believes that these classes are beneficial to his future ambition.
In STEM Maths, I've learned a lot of things like science adventure with Kelvin, make game designing with Roblox Studios, and Minecraft with internet and electricity. And all this is going to help me become an engineer that I want to be.
The STEM approach is an effective method which helps in bridging the gap between theory and controlled practice for kids. It fosters their creative and divergent thinking and motivates young children to generate new technologies and ideas.
So the idea is to explore areas of creativity, which could involve science experiments, could involve sound, could involve design thinking, all around unleashing that creative mindset. If you're able to think and problem solve, you're able to, create, you're able to apply whatever concepts. So you don't have to know the subject. You can approach something and say, because you have a systematic way of thinking. So we want to raise thinkers. We want to raise people who will create businesses, who will come up with ideas that will improve the economic development of our country.
This is a simple circuit, and it uses chemicals. It uses chemicals to power the LED light. When the switch is not on, the circuit is not complete, so the light doesn't come on. But when it's on, the light comes on.
STEM education focuses on logical thought processes and problem solving, allowing students to succeed in any field. Building a strong STEM foundation now will set students up for success in future by challenging them to think critically and come up with their own solutions.
And finally on the program, Sadio Mane of Senegal has been named African Footballer of the Year for the second time. The award was given after a season in which the 30-year-old scored the winning penalty against Egypt to land Senegal their first ever Africa Cup of Nations title. 6 weeks later, he repeats the feat and again against Egypt to give his country the qualification for the World Cup in Qatar this year.
Mane said it was an amazing feeling to win the award.
And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shibuale. Have a lovely weekend.